In this video, we're going to look at how we can talk about the properties of stars to create a picture of these patterns that occur when we look at stars as a whole and ultimately produce a graph that we call the HR diagram or the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. The HR diagram looks like this. It's kind of a wild graph where we have temperature on the x-axis. You'll notice that there's some interesting things with this x-axis. It starts with a high temperature on the left and then a low temperature on the right. It's also got kind of a logarithmic scale going on. And then on the y-axis, we have the luminosity, and that luminosity is in a log scale as well. Every increment usually goes up by 10 times what the increment was before. So 10, then 1, then 10, then 100, 1,000, so on. You'll notice that the luminosity here is not measured in watts. We normally talk about luminosity. In this case, it's actually measured in the luminosity of the sun, either described as L sun or L with a circle and a dot. This just means that if you have a luminosity of 10 solar luminosities, that star is 10 times the luminosity of our sun. So we're just using our sun as kind of a unit here to allow the numbers to be a little bit friendlier and to give us a frame of reference that's a little bit easier than using huge amounts of watts. Now you'll notice there are some really interesting patterns that show up when you organize stars in this way. One, you see kind of this color gradient that takes place. That is a function of the temperature and how we are organizing the temperature, where our hot stars are our blue stars and our cooler stars are the red stars. You'll also notice that there's this diagonal kind of line that goes through. We call it the main sequence. And then on either side of that diagonal, we've got some special stars called the red giants and the white dwarfs. We'll talk about each of those stars in succession as well. So if I have just a simpler version of this diagram, a couple different ways that we can think about the stars that show up here. I like to think of it almost as quadrants, where on one side here we've got the hot stars. So up in the top left, this is our large hot, and then small hot. So kind of the vertical axis here, our y, is really talking about how large the star is. It's luminosity, but luminosity is pretty analogous to the star's size overall. On the right-hand side, we've got small cool on the bottom right, and then large cool on the top right. So knowing that this is true, it's pretty easy to place the red giants. Obviously, giant is large and red is cooler, so that would be in the large cool. Whereas small hot, like our white dwarfs, are going to be in that small hot quadrant. I also expect you to be able to identify where the sun shows up on this graph. Now, you might not remember off the top of your head what the temperature of the sun is, but you should know what the luminosity of the sun is if the unit is in solar luminosities. Our sun has a luminosity of exactly one sun worth. So if you find where one sun is, trace it over until you hit the main sequence. That's where our sun shows up. It's right there. From that, you should be able to actually have a pretty good estimate of what the temperature of our sun is as long as you have access to an HR diagram. You can just trace that down. Find that our sun's temperature is somewhere between 5 and 6,000 degrees Kelvin. There are lots of different ways that you can see HR diagrams show up. Here are some of my favorites, especially this juggler image. I think it's just a really cool depiction that we see kind of a main sequence showing up in addition to the red giants and white dwarves, all hidden in this scene of a juggler juggling all of these different splotchy circles here. Okay, now we've seen in that diagram some depiction of size that we saw, like the red giants were bigger than the white dwarfs, but nothing really does that justice in a diagram like that. You can't really see really how much larger these stars are. So I want to play a short video showing just how dramatically these differences are. So in this video, it's going to go through and describe all of these different astronomical objects, starting with the moon. There's Mars, Venus, and then ultimately, finally, the Earth. The Earth is obviously large, but we're going to see it pales in comparison to even the gas giants in our own solar system. We've got Saturn, and then the biggest planet in our solar system, Jupiter. Now you can see how much larger the sun is. Our star, the Earth is way down here. Um, over 1 million Earths could fit in our sun. But I think what's amazing is you start to discover that our sun, relative to some of these other stars, is actually fairly small overall. As you get to the red giants, some blue giants, and then ultimately some red supergiants, how much larger some of these stars end up getting. Okay, so you get the idea of just how much bigger these stars can get. It's going to zoom in here to show the size of the Earth compared to this very, very large star. And it's so far that you can't even see the curvature of that star at all. So, as a reminder, we've seen some equations that can help us relate some of the properties that these stars have. Luminosity, brightness, and temperature are all related to these different mathematical properties. One of these I want to start looking at because it's very related to what we are seeing here in our organization of stars, and that is related to the star's color and temperature. The color that a star appears is dependent entirely on its temperature. We'll see later on something called redshift or blue shift, but that doesn't really change the color that we see. That changes the spectrum. Instead, the color that we see is really a depiction of its temperature. The hottest stars are blue, and the coldest stars are red. And cold is a relative term here. It's still 3,000 Kelvin, still very hot. You'll notice here, though, that this temperature is very much related to the color that's created, and that is based on this equation here, where lambda max is our maximum wavelength of the spectrum that's produced, times the temperature is equal to this constant, 2.9 times 10 to the minus third. Now, if I rearrange that and solve for lambda max, you will see how this temperature results in a color. I can just plug in these different temperature stars, starting with 6,000. I get 4.83 times 10 to the minus seventh meters. Nobody really talks about wavelength of a visible light in meters. Instead, that's usually converted into nanometers. So if you multiply by 10 to the ninth, we'll turn that into 483 nanometers. Visible light, as a good frame of reference, is always going to be hundreds of nanometers. So if you're never not sure, just know that your nanometers need to be in the hundreds. So here, 483 nanometers shows up here. That's a blue star. And you'll notice it shows up blue because it is more blue than any of the other colors in that spectrum. Let's look at these other ones. If I divide by 5,000, I get 5.8 times 10 to the minus 7, which is 580 nanometers. That shows up as kind of a yellowish star. And then lambda max has 2.9 times 10 to the minus 3 divided by 4,000. That gives me 7.25 times 10 to the minus 7th, which is 725 nanometers. That is a red star. So our coldest stars match the wavelength of red light, and our hottest stars match the wavelength of blue light. You'll notice there that there were no green or purple stars that show up. That is an often a question that happens. Like, why don't we see that? Turns out our sun, the maximum wavelength, is actually squarely in the green. So why doesn't our sun look green? Well, you might know from your history of knowing like the colors of light that if you have like this yellow whited star here in the middle, if you have a pretty good representation of all of the different colors of the rainbow, what you end up getting is white. So if all the colors are there pretty evenly, they mix together to form white. The difference between the blue and the red stars is it's not an even mixing. We have way more red light or way more blue light compared to the other colors, which is why that appearance shows up as a different color. You might, if you look at a hardware store and check out the back of a light bulb box, you might see a reference to this. It's kind of antiquated because it's based on old incandescent light bulbs. The color appearance of them is always listed as a temperature in Kelvin. So a warm light here is like 3,000 Kelvin, and then a cold light, a bluish light, is like 8,000 Kelvin. Now, this is different than what we just talked about, where the hottest stars are blue and the coldest stars are red. So don't lock this in as the comparison. But it's kind of a cool representation of how this color of light is connected to the temperature overall. So we saw those curves, and those curves represented the temperature, either a high intensity or a shifting wavelength. You'll notice in these pictures, though, these actual star data, that there's these weird missing specific wavelengths. So there's something else happening here in the star's light that's going to allow us to understand a little bit more about that star. And what's happening is related to what we talked about in the atomic physics unit with the light spectrum. As you remember, uh, light can be absorbed and cause electrons to move up in their energy level, or light can be emitted when an electron falls back down. And the result is different elements have different energy level transitions to cause different wavelengths of light to create kind of these fingerprints of light that help us identify different elements. Well, this works both ways. We talked about this before largely as an emission of light. That's when electrons emit energy falling down from a higher energy level to a lower energy level. But it can also go the other way. They can absorb energy to jump up. So the amount that they release when they fall down, if that same energy of photon were to smack into an electron, it can absorb it and then hop up to the energy level that match that energy. What this means is we have two types of spectra. An emission spectra, where we see just the specific wavelengths of light being emitted by that gas and the electrons inside it. Or you can basically send a continuous spectrum through a gas, and then that gas, the electrons inside absorb specific wavelengths out of that continuous spectrum to create this absorption spectrum. Now, the nice thing is these perfectly match each other. It's basically like photo negative, that the specific wavelengths are the same for emission as they are for absorption. So those fingerprints hold true in either case. Here's another picture of what that might look like. We're used to seeing it kind of in this look, but this stellar spectrum also has that stereotypical look of what the peak wavelength is based on its temperature for the black body radiation. And different stars have different spectra, and studying the spectra of the stars can help us determine what the stars are made out of. So just by looking at which colors of light are no longer in the light, we know which elements exist inside the star. We call these absorption spectra because it's the lines that of the missing wavelengths that we are not seeing due to the elements inside. So some takeaways here. You feel to place a star on the axis showing luminosity and temperature to produce this HR or Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. You could also be able to describe certain parts of this using the main sequence, calculating distance, brightness. We'll get to some of those calculations later on. And then identify the chemical makeup of a star in that absorption spectrum, knowing that the fingerprint of that star tells us which elements are present inside the star.